Man, that was from the movie. That's a clip from the film Greenland, which is available now on Blu-ray and DVD. Got a lot of folks in that movie that I particularly like, and one of them is on the phone with us right now. You know I'm a big Training Day fan, and this dude played Roger in Training Day, and I got to ask him about one of those scenes. But first, DB, run it down the line. Who we got on the show today, DB?
Well, while a lot of people were celebrating Valentine's Day on the 14th, I myself, being single and a big fan of The Silence of the Lambs, was celebrating the 30th anniversary of the film's release, which came out on Valentine's Day back in 1991. He played Jack Crawford, who worked for the FBI, who was responsible for sending Clarice Starling over to talk with Hannibal Lecter, and that movie has just become like a major piece of history in film, and one of my favorites. I also have to mention he was part of Apocalypse Now, The Hunt for Red October. Rest in peace to Sean Connery. We lost him last year. He was also in Backdraft. He was in Courage Under Fire with Denzel Washington before he joined Denzel again on screen in Training Day as Roger. He was also in The Bourne Ultimatum and The Bourne Legacy. He had one of my favorite lines in The Bourne Ultimatum. My number one rule is hope for the best, plan for the worst. But now he's starring as Dale in the film Greenland, available now on Blu-ray and DVD. Please welcome Scott Glenn.
Scott
Glenn. Hey, Scott.
What's happening? Good morning.
Scott, how you doing, man? This is Sway. Big fan of yours, man. Happy to have you on the show.
Very
brother.
much so.
Absolutely,
I'm
man.
doing good.
Hey, man, it sounds like you're doing good. When he read back all your accolades, man, I figured, man, this dude must be sitting pretty right now, man. When you hear when you hear it back and you hear your life back to yourself, man, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, what it makes me feel is stuck here in quarantine, wishing I had a 4 a.m. call sheet.
Oh, I heard that. Wishing for it, right?
Huh.
That's interesting. You'd rather be working. You'd rather be out and about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife and I get our second vaccine tomorrow, so maybe we're getting closer to it. But yeah, I mean, you know that it's just things have changed.
Things have changed, right? So you're on your second vaccine. What was it like? How's that experience been like? You know, still people.
It was the first one was chills and like feeling kind of shitty for about a day, and then it was okay. Second one's supposed to be a little bit harder hitting, but I'm willing to pay that price just to put this thing in the rearview mirror
and keep it moving. I'm not mad at that, man. I'm not mad at that, Scott. Man, when I listen to. Man, by the way, can I call you Scott? Is that okay?
Yes. And what do I call you, Sway or Mr.
Just call
Calloway?
me. Hey, man, Sway is worse with me. First name basis with us, Scott. Come on, brother. First name basis, man. When I listen, I want to talk about all these movies, but I just listened to your beginnings, and where you actually started from. It's a lot of folks that end up in high places that never planned on it. And when I look at your history, you went from the Marines to working as a sports reporter to being a person to becoming an author but who could not write dialogue. And so how did you end up acting? Was acting never really a goal? You just fell into it?
No, I never really thought of it. It kind of ambushed me. What happened was I didn't like the job I had. I was working as a newspaper reporter, and I was doing police desk and feeling like I was making my living off of other people's misery. And so I applied for a job on the sports desk of a paper in the Virgin Islands. I got the job, though it wasn't starting for 6 months. I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and and what I love more than anything else is poetry. And that's what I wanted to do, write poetry and short stories. And she told me, she said, why don't you're not doing anything for, you got this job, it's not starting for 6 months. You hate what you're doing now. Why don't you get your ass to New York and take an acting class? And I said, where's that come from? And she said, I'll be honest with you, Scott, you write, ideas of action and place and pretty good, but your dialogue essentially sucks. It's stiff, and it's not the way anybody ever talks. And the minute you put words into anybody's mouth, you lose it. So she said, if you have to get on stage in front of people and say words, it'll kick you in your ass to listen to the way people really talk. And if you're dealing with theater, you'll be dealing with arguably, the best dialogue ever written. So after I got over about 30 seconds of being pissed off for telling me the truth, I thought, it's true. So I went to New York and I got a couple jobs, laying brick and bouncer in a bar over in the East Village. And I looked up acting in the newspaper, nothing under A, under B, it said Berghoff's. And I called them up, and I got this guy named Bill Hickey, who was one of America's greatest character actors. He said, yeah, work on something and bring it over Wednesday. And that Wednesday, I went down in the basement of Berghoff Studios in the West Village and walked in front of about 11 tired people. And before I even opened my mouth, it was like a light bulb went off literally between my eyes, the only time in my life. And I just thought, holy shit, I'm an actor. And it wasn't like a big epiphany or anything like that. It was just, I don't know, Sway. It was like my life made sense to me. It just didn't. Hickey saw it, and he pointed at me. He said, yeah, that's right. You're one of us. And I never did the scene. I walked outside, and I remember I called my mom and dad up, and I said, I'm not going to the Virgin Islands. I'm going to be an actor. I knew that quick, but I had never really planned on it. And my dad told me, he said, I don't know anything about what you're talking about, but he said, the only advice I can give you is don't give yourself any deadlines. Don't say, if I haven't made this in 4 years, I'm going to, paint buildings or something. And he said, if you love it, make it your life. And that's pretty much how it went.
And it has been his life ever since. Man, I love that story, man. I didn't even realize all that. Scott Glenn is here, man. We're talking about Greenland. Tracy, go ahead and jump in and talk with Scott for a second.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. Hearing, just as you shared with us, the trajectory of your life, and I couldn't help but think about your wife, Carol, and how you guys have been married for decades upon decades upon decades. I mean, she has had, like a front row seat of your evolution. And in Hollywood, we're so used to hearing an actor be married for a second time, for a third time. You know what I mean? Divorces are more the way that tale goes versus long-standing unions. Can you share just some of your standout reflections on how you guys make this work?
Well, to begin with, she's a tough lady from Brooklyn, and has probably put up with an awful lot from me. But she's an artist too. She's a potter, and the truth be known, she's a way better artist than I am. But somebody one time asked her, we've been married now for 52 years, which is hard to wrap my head around, but she was asked a number of years back, what's your secret? And she said, well, Scott goes away on long locations. And then she said, she thought for a minute, and she said, we're very together because we've never grown up. She said, Scott's still into make-believe, and I'm still playing in the mud.
Your inner childs connect.
Yeah, and we're both East Coast city kids, so I call myself a kid. I'm a skinny old man right now, but
you're in good shape, Scott.
But we got that. That's our mentality. I hope I'm not. Well, Sway, I know, is from Oakland.
Yeah.
Which is kind of East Coast anyway. Mm-hmm. But we both grew up in places where you don't have to read between the lines when you talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just be straight up.
Straightforward. Everybody's, Oakland's the same way. It's the exact same way. I'm also interested in your background because I read that you have Native American ancestry, but I also read that, Scott Glenn, that you like to go spearfishing. And I grew up, you mentioned the Bay, I grew up an angler. I grew up fishing with, of course, live bait. I like to fish with, lures. I've done it all, but I've never done spearfishing. Does that have anything to do with your ancestry, or is that just something you grew up doing?
It's hard to. It's really hard to answer that question because in some ways, I think whatever the genetic messages are that are running around in my bloodstream, of, talk to me. But what happened with that was I was a snorkeler and a free diver, and a friend of mine just said, he said he lived in Hawaii, and he said, have you ever been a deep water spearfishing? I said, no. And he said, I think you might enjoy it because it forces you to live in the present, and which it does. And I just tried it, and it's when you go 30 miles off the coast, so the water is no longer hundreds of feet deep; it's now thousands of feet deep, and jump into the water, and there are always a bunch of sharks around. Some people either really freak out, and because it's almost like being in outer space, and other people, me being one of them, kind of feel like I've come home. I don't do it anymore. I quit doing it, but not because I didn't love it. I was just told by a dermatologist that it was that you're courting skin cancer if you spend too much time out there doing that. But I just really loved it. I love being in the water with wild, crazy things, and it's one of those things. I was thinking about it, because I do track days on motorcycles and stuff that a lot of people think is risky. But the odd thing about that, maybe the odd thing about that is it's in a kind of an emotional, spiritual way, it's very restful because you don't think about, oh shit, I feel bad about what happened yesterday, or I'm worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. There is no yesterday or tomorrow. You're right there in the moment, and it's it's a weird kind of peace that you get from doing that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's why I fish. That's for me. It's therapeutic. You're surrounded by nature. You got that water running, banging off the rocks. Scott, it's creating that vibe, that energy, that rhythm. I got a different relationship with the sun, Scott, so I could step out there a little longer than you. Because of, we, what I mean.
Different
so
ancestors.
A little different ancestry going on here. So but I'll catch a few for you, man. Scott Glenn is here, man. I'm really happy to have him here. DB, I know you want to jump in. And let's talk a little about Greenland, but I also want to ask you, you work with so many legends, from Anthony Hopkins to Denzel, and the list could go on. And Training Day obviously was one of my favorite movies, and one of my favorite scenes is when Ethan Hawke and Denzel and Dr. Dre they come and invade your home, and Denzel's character really trying to get to that money any way possible, and we all know that it ain't gonna end well. Not for Roger, at least. It's not gonna end well. He got to get this $1 million before the Russian mob get to him. It's just ugly. For you though, do you ever have surreal moments like, damn, I cannot believe I gotta work, I gotta deliver these lines, but I'm in the room with Ethan Hawke, I'm in the room with Denzel Washington. That's Dr. Dre. What was that? What was it like? Like, what can you share with us? Did it not matter? Did I not register? Like, what was it like sharing the scene with them during that particular?
Well, to begin with, in my book, Denzel is the finest American actor working right now. It may quite possibly just the finest period. Wow. I met D doing Courage Under Fire. And I was, when I got offered Training Day, I'd been working straight for 2 years, and I knew I was going to start this movie called Shipping News in 2 weeks. So I had 2 weeks off, and I thought I'd just go home and hang out with my wife and play. And then somebody said, Denzel wants you to be in a movie with him, and I just instinctively said, God, I love working with Denzel, But no, I got to have some time off. So he got a hold of me, and he said, this is the way it works. I need somebody to play, my best friend, a white guy, who I kill at the end of the movie, and everybody in the audience has got to be pissed off at me for betraying this relationship. And he said, that's you. So nobody else can do it, and you got to do it. So I said, okay. And working with Denzel is just, it's joyful because the two of us worked out what our history was, fictional history, that's never really mentioned in the scene. But how did we get together, and how do we get close, and how do we get into the ritual of drinking $5,000 bottles of scotch and all this shit? So we both decided that what we had shared was never mentioned in the movie and didn't need to be, was Vietnam. So we worked out that, and then when Dre came in, I never said this to him. He's changed. When we first started doing the scene, they had a bunch of guns on the set, and one of Dre's bodyguards looked across, and there was an automatic pistol across the room, and Dre said, "What is that?" And the guy said, "That's a Glock." And I said, "No, it's not. It's a SIG." And so the guy went over, and he said, "No, Scott's right. It's a SIG." And then later on, they had I don't know, an MP5 that got jammed, and nobody could fix it. So I field stripped it. And Dre said, "Hey, dog, is there anything about guns you don't know?" And I said, maybe not. I don't know. My grandkids were on the set at the time, and they heard him call me dog. So for the rest of my life, for two of my grandkids, I am Grandpa Dog. I mean, what I didn't say to Dr. Dre was that I believe this is true. You guys can tell me whether maybe it's bullshit, but I believe he produced the first song that I really listened to from one of probably my three favorite poets, Tupac Shakur. And it was California Love. And I think Dre produced that song. Maybe he didn't. I don't know.
Scott Glenn, your hip-hop knowledge runs deep. You are absolutely correct.
Yep, deep like those waters.
You're a hip-hop head, dog.
Well, it was the funny thing about California, I finally really listened to it because Tupac, I mean, do you guys know who Francois Villon was? He was a middle-aged, one of France's greatest poets, and his life makes Tupac's life look like a choir boy. But I always saw kind of the big rap against Villon until history treated him differently. Was he was just a gangster and a criminal, and and he was. I mean, his first crime was killing a priest in a knife fight, and then he was sentenced to hang 3 or 4 times. But the stuff he wrote was so beautiful and so profound, and it spoke to the street life in Paris at the time for somebody who grew up with nothing. And I think that history is going to treat Tupac the same way. But but anyway, I was listening to that to California Love, and I realized years later that I got the words wrong, and I may have it. It was where he says, "We in the sunshine state where the bomb ass empty, a state where you never find the dance floor empty, and pimps be on a mission for them greens, lean, mean, money-making machines serving fiends." And I thought for a number of years what he said was, "And 10th Street on a mission for them greens, giving me money-making machines selling dreams." But
well, that was bars too, though. I like what you did with that, Scott Glenn. That wasn't what he said, but I see where you went with it. I like those bars too. Wow, that's interesting, and I like the comparison.
So, is it true? Is it true that you had the last major interview with him?
Wow.
Scott, this is your interview, but I will do this. I have one of the last. I don't know who had the exact last. I know he and I sat down on a set of How Do You Want It video, I believe it was. I had to sneak on the set. He wasn't allowed. He wasn't being permitted to speak out publicly, but he had called me. I knew him from Oakland. Scott, before, once he was with Digital Underground and he was in that group Digital Underground, and then he blew up. He started going. I knew him from that time, the come up time. So it was a different kind of relationship for us. It was like friends who were in the same field. He went off and did it. His star ascended way faster than mine ever could, and for obvious reasons. And I can't say how long it was before he passed after that, before he was shot and killed, but it was a couple of months before that we did that interview. Yeah, man. Actually, it's a lot in that interview. Some stuff that never even been put out there in the public that I didn't release because it wasn't for that. Man. Yeah, man. Yeah, Scott. Scott Glenn, man. Come on. Round of applause.
This is great.
This is awesome. Hold on, man. We got in Iowa, Chuck in Iowa. Go ahead, Chuck. You want to say something with Scott Glenn?
Chuck.
Yeah, I do. How you doing, Mr. Glenn? Hey, family, Sway family. How y'all doing? But well, Mr. Glenn, you're in my favorite movie, and my favorite movie line came from that movie, and that was Silverado. How was that? How was that set like? Was it humorous? Was it really? I know it's probably hard work, riding horses and whatnot. But what was that like? What was that experience like working on Silverado?
Well, the thing is, I was doing a movie that I won't mention in Germany that was actually pretty much a piece of shit, and I felt like I was stuck in it. And I got sent the script by Larry Kasdan with a note that said, "Read this. I wrote the part of Emmett for you." So that thing was written for me. And I remember when I was maybe a third of the way into it, and I just threw it up in the air and went, "Yeah!" I was so happy. It was doing that movie was, you get lucky sometimes. I remember we all were out in New Mexico about 3 weeks before we started shooting to rehearse everything because we were shooting in high country, which meant we only had about 5 hours of decent light a day to work. So everything had to be worked out ahead of time. And at the beginning of rehearsal, what Kasdan said, "Is there anybody here who cannot ride horses?" And only 2 people took one step forward, and that was me and Danny Glover. And they looked at me and they said, "You don't know how," and I said, "No, I've discovered in life, that especially with physical things, it's best to tell the truth. It can catch up on you really fast." So they brought this horse over. Well, they gave me riding lessons for about two and a half weeks, and then Larry Kasdan went out and looked at all the horses they had, and he saw this big gray horse, one I wound up riding, and he said, "That's the horse I want Scott on." And the wrangler said, "No, I brought that. That's my horse. That's a national steer roping champion. He's only 5 years old, and stunt riders can't ride him. He's dangerous. You get near him with spurs, and he'll kill you. And I can ride him, but no, Scott can't ride that horse. Nobody can." And so Larry Kasdan just said, I just love the color of that horse, and I like the way it looks. So I said, "Why don't you saddle the horse up and I'll walk out, and if he makes a bad move towards me, I'm not brave. I'll run away. I'll get out of it." So as I was walking out to the horse, I remembered this woman in England that I was listening to. She was an animal trainer named Barbara Woodhouse, and she said the horses communicate by blowing in each other's noses. So I walked out, and they also said, "You've got to let this horse know who the boss is right away. You cannot let this horse be in charge of you." So I walk out, and it's just me and the horse. I'm looking at Ajax, and I said, "To begin with, Ajax, I don't know if you can understand any of the shit I'm saying to you, but the way it works is you're the boss. You're way bigger and way stronger than me. I know shit about riding. And as I was talking to the horse, he put his nose real near me, and I blew in it as hard as I could. And he blew back and hit me in the face with a wad of snot the size of a snowball. and then he started rubbing his head up against my chest. And I got up on him, and he didn't move. I touched him with my heels. He started off galloping. I touched him a little harder. He started off really running hard, but smooth. And it was like, and then at one point I wanted him to stop, so I dropped my heels and I said, whoa, forgetting that he was a steer roping champion. So he just puts his heels in and stops, and I go out over his head and land on the ground. Thank God I didn't break my, didn't get a concussion or anything.
Wow.
But I'm lying on the ground, and the horse trots over to me, puts his big wet muzzle on my face, and starts rubbing me to make sure I'm okay. And so the horse would let me do anything I wanted. I mean, I did things called fender drags and shot full load blanks between his head, and he just took care of me. They would open the corral in the morning and let him loose, and he would trot over to my motorhome and wait for me to come out.
Wow.
And so people see that movie and they think, wow, Scott Glenn, he's like a real cowboy. He's an expert rider. I don't know shit about riding. It's just that the horse just made me look good. And everything in that movie was kind of like that. Sometimes you do things and you just feel like there's, I don't know what the word is, a blessing over the whole thing.
Yeah, it's anointed.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing.
Yeah,
is
there you go.
Yeah. Hey, man, that's a Chuck, thank you for your call and your question, man. I hope that answered your question, man. You citizen, brother.
Yeah.
Sway in the morning.
That's right.
All right, man. DB, before I know, Scott, I know you got to go, but, man, when this whole thing opens up and you can come by the building, we would love to have you on the show in person. But
where are you, Sway? Where are you?
We're in New York. We're in New York. I'm in New York right now. We broadcast out of New York. Right now I'm in Harlem. I'm at my home.
The minute we put this thing in the rearview mirror, I would love to come and see you face to face. It would be my honor.
Oh man, it'd be our honor as well, man. Thank you, sir. Before you go though, DB, he's a big fan of yours, and he got something special he wants to run by you real quick. DB, go ahead, man.
Well, I mean, I know we're short on time at this point, so really, I just wanted to ask about Greenland because when we meet your character Dale, I won't give away too much, but when we meet him, he's kind of just hanging around and really doesn't seem to be too concerned about this comet that's heading towards Earth. So I just wanted to know if this was a real life scenario and there was a comet heading towards our planet, what would you want to do and how would you want to spend your last, remaining hours if you were not going to head for Greenland, if that was where the bunkers were?
If I couldn't do anything, and I can't imagine that's just not how I'm wired. I'd try to figure out some way. I'd want to be around my family and my grandkids and people I love. But I mean, it's pretty. What I felt about that when we made that movie, we'd never heard the term coronavirus or any of that, and now you look at the movie, and it's almost all you can think about, and it's kind of like I was thinking about it that what my character wants is pretty much what I would want, which is for the younger part of my family to. If there's a problem in the family, work it out, make sure everybody is healed and strong and together so that they can stick together and have the discipline to get to Canada and survive this thing. And in an odd way, and this, I hope it's not pretentious of me to say it, but in an odd way, I think that dealing with the family and that is kind of a metaphor for the whole country, and we really have to have accountability and then mercy and then fucking love, so we can all share the discipline we need to get through this thing. And anyway, that's how I feel.
Listen, Greenland is available. I watched the movie. I really enjoyed it. It's available on Blu-ray and DVD. Scott Glenn, man, you're a class act, bro.
Word up.
You're a class act, man. And I want to thank you for being on the show. DB, that's all you had? I thought you had something else for him. That was it?
Well, I mean, if I'm allowed to say it, then I'll go ahead and shoot. Like I mentioned at the beginning, Silence of the Lambs, the 30th anniversary was on Valentine's Day, and we recently saw Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. They did a reunion on Zoom, and they were talking about how some of the behind the scenes stuff Anthony would do, like staying in character and just to give off this creepy vibe. And a lot of the stuff that was figured out that we see on camera just kind of came along in the process of shooting. I mean, I know you didn't really share the scenes like Jodie did with Anthony at the facility and things like that, but was there anything that stuck out for you personally about the making of that film? Because it's remarkable watching it even now. It's still scary as hell seeing some of those scenes with Buffalo Bill and the interaction between Jodie and Anthony. I mean, was there something particular about your experience working on Silence of the Lambs?
Not to leave on a blue note, but yeah, I was doing research for that. I went down to Quantico to hang out with a guy named John Douglas, who created behavioral science and investigated. They don't call it serial killing; they call it sexual homicide. And I hung out with him for a week and a half, and sat in on cases, and it still gets in the way of my sleep.
Mm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up. I grew up in Pittsburgh. The only team that the Steelers ever felt approached life like them were the Oakland Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I was in the Marine Corps, so it's not like I've led a sheltered life, but I was exposed to stuff doing research on that film that I just never realized human beings could get that bad.
That bad, huh? Even in war, like you've been in the Marines, the things of that heinous. Well, thank you for sharing that, Scott Glenn, and that lets you know we got a lot of work we got to do. We got a lot of work we got to do, man. But I appreciate you being on this show. You're officially a citizen.
A Sway in the morning.
And then as soon as we get behind this, and it wasn't a blue note, I appreciate your transparency and sharing that with us about your process. And so when the doors open up, you get the vaccine. We're all clean and clear, man. Come join us. We can sit in the studio, sip on some tea, and share some Tupac stories. How about that, all right?
I would love that, yeah.
Okay. And tell your grandkids that we called you a citizen of Sway in the morning, dog, okay?
Yeah.
Scott Glenn, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to come back. We're going to have our Black History spotlight.
Yes.
Scott, thank you again, man. Appreciate you. Get to Greenland.
Thank you. Later, y'all.
All right. And get